Yeah, I think Jake the Muslim metaphysician.
Oh, you made the claim the other day that you could go toe to toe with him.
I think I could go fairly toe to toe with them on the Trinity. Sure.
Yeah, but John is here. We can continue talking, but John, I do want to hear you eventually because I heard you've been talking shit, dude.
Oh, dude, go
But
get him.
No, I haven't.
Go get him.
I never talked bad about you, Jake.
That's
Talked
right.
all that shit. Yeah, I'll debate him. I'll debate him.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Magic.
actually didn't
You
say
did
that,
say
by the
that.
way.
We were all there.
You
That's a
agreed.
misquote. No, no. The quote "I'll debate him" is a misquote. I've never said that.
Oh my
Not even
God!
close.
Something close to
Who
that.
said they were quoting you? It's what you said, not what
John,
you uttered.
did you tell them that you had a model that I couldn't respond to for like a year?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he tried it on Jack and got fucking demolished.
He did say
Did
he
you not say
thought.
this morning that you thought that like you could like hold your own
Go,
against Jake?
go toe to
Like go
toe.
head to head? Yeah,
Toe to
toe to
toe.
toe.
About and your model is
That
relative
was
identity.
that was a statement I made
Oh,
yesterday, in a sense that I thought I could at least respond.
we look, we were teasing a bit. He didn't say he would humiliate and destroy you. That's ridiculous, right? That was a joke. He did say he has a model of the Trinity, relative identity, that he feels confident he can defend. And he said if you wanted to talk to him about it, he would not be opposed. That's the truth of what he said.
Basically, that's accurate what I said.
So let's go.
And with regard to that particular model, I was told about several different models. I had to look them up individually and see what mostly aligned to what I already have a view. I just don't have a name for my view, and it just seemed to me what was being described that closely, most aligned with what that was consistent with what I viewed. Now, are there no problems with that view? I think there are. I really do think there are. But
This is a lot of just like the bloviating stuff. Like Jake,
Are
what
we
do you?
gonna? Yeah, we're gonna do the
I
vote yes
still,
no
I
thing
still
where you
think,
argue both
I,
sides.
yeah, I
John?
still think that I could at
Great,
least
let's do
defend
it.
it in a way that doesn't
Yeah,
Do
let's
it
lead
just
then.
get past the
to
Do it then.
forward. Let's
Let's
just
go.
move
some
past
sort
it.
of
Go.
Look,
Let's
heresy.
go. Let's go.
Jake, what do you think about the model of relative identity?
That's the only model.
Well, I
That's
want to
the
hear
only
what
one.
John. I want to hear what John's model is. Can you explain it, John?
Well, I mean, as far as like the view of the person of the Trinity, and it's the same old thing. It's like um, there is an understanding of identity that is not analytically identical from the Father when the Father is God as stated, and so it is understood in a relative sense to where the Son can also be the Father in identity as well as the Spirit, and so it is it basically is not an analytical identity understanding. And if you
Yeah.
want more than that, I could possibly give you a little bit more.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Do you think the Father is identical to God?
Yes, in a relative sense.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that?
Meaning that it's not exclusive, it's not identical, analytically identical, and so it opens up the ability for the Son to also be God.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what that means, dude. Saying they're identical, but in a different sense. In what other sense? What does that mean?
Like one example would be something um, like you as a person. I can't even believe I'm giving this example. This is something that Jack brought up, but you have a ticket to 38B, let's say, right? And you get off the train, and I have a ticket to 38B. So the essence would be sort of understood as the being that is holding 38B, right? But you'd be a person that's holding it and in that seat, and I would be but we're different persons. and but we're that same being in a sense of holding that ticket. I know that's not a great analogy, but
Yeah, but then you in that case you have two beings that are just holding a paper that has something written on it. It's the same thing.
well,
So why would we count
it
them?
would sort of be
Why would we count
understood
them
as
as one instead of two?
well. It would be understood as two persons. Now, with respect to the Trinity, it would be the same being.
Yeah, but the
Which
question is why? Why would we count them as two persons but not two beings?
because they have the same essence, and one
They have the
essence
same
represents one
essence because they're
being.
carrying a paper that has the same writing on it?
No. It was just the understanding of that. I'm not saying that, um, um, like in the sense of the ticket holder. I'm not saying they are the same being. I'm just saying that it can be understood as the being that holds the ticket. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but
So
there's
so
clearly
so
not one being holding the ticket. There's two.
yeah. In that case, in that example, yeah, it is two beings, right? Two different beings holding the same ticket. In the case of God, rather than two different beings, it would be one being, but two persons.
Yeah, I don't understand how anyone is going to count two people holding a similar piece of paper with the same writing on it and claim that there's only one being there. It makes absolutely no sense, John.
Well, it would be understood as the being that's holding the piece of paper, which would
Yeah,
be
who
true in
is the
both cases.
being? Who is the being that it's referring to?
The person that is holding, that is occupying that seat.
And who is that? Is it person A or person B? Or is it a combination of the two?
Well, I guess if you're including the time factor, depending upon the time, it would be person A or person B. Or if it's the case that they actually simultaneously have gotten the ticket, then they would be the same person. I mean, they would be simultaneously on the same trip, holding that particular ticket.
Bro, this is probably one of the worst analogies
Yeah,
or examples I've ever heard.
yeah. This
I
is
don't understand.
no. I'm just saying that that's like one of the examples. It's not even my example, and I'm not trying to say that this particular model would somehow um, or understanding of the relative identity is representative of you know of the model of the Trinity. I'm just saying this is just one way to understand it, and so I'm not really expecting, in a sense, to have someone say, "Okay, I get the Trinity now." That's not what it's meant. That analogy is not what that was meant.
John, can you explain what relative identity is?
Yeah, I could try. I could, like, where, um, yeah, I thought I did in the beginning, where uh, one person could be understood as uh, a being identically, relatively, whereas it does not preclude another person sharing the personhood of the being. And so, in other words, there can be three persons in one being, three or more, if you
What?
want to say it that way.
So you think that what you're trying to say is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are the same God, but are different persons, right?
Well, that would just be Orthodox Trinitarianism.
Yeah. And the question is, how do you have two things, in this case, namely the Father and the Son? I'm just using that as an example. You have two things, the Father and the Son. How are you saying that they're identical to a third thing, which is the being, and yet they're not identical to each other? It just violates Leibniz's law, classical
Right.
identity.
20 minutes later.
So you don't hold to classical identity necessarily.
I think in the natural order of things, I do hold to classical identity. I think when we look at God, He's not limited to the natural laws that are.
Okay.
He's not subject to
So
them. In other words.
now you're basically going like in the direction of what Darth was saying in the clip. You don't think that God is, as you were basically saying, constrained by the laws of logic. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe I heard you call that like voluntarism or something like that.
Yeah, voluntarism.
I don't really know what that term entails, but
Basically, they're created by God's will, so they're not necessary.
What do you mean you don't know what it's into? It entails that God's not constrained by the laws of logic. Do you agree? Yes or no?
well, I mean,
Period.
clearly, like when He multiplies the loaves and the fishes, then you know.
Oh God! See, John, listen.
Mhm.
Literally, I spent how long on Facebook when I was chatting with you and James Gibson and Matt Adams? I spent a really, really long time trying to explain to you guys what a contradiction is. And it was so frustrating because you guys keep bringing up this example. You don't understand the relevant difference between the two. So it seems like you still don't understand what an actual contradiction is.
Well, I remembered a lot of those times when we were having those discussions. It was just like, okay, there's this option, there's this choice, there's that choice. And I do remember for a time, I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah. Like I would even say it explicitly. Yeah, God violates the classical laws of identity or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
you're basically saying that now, John. You're basically saying it. Like, if that's your view, fine. Just own up to it, and that's your view. And deal with the consequences or entailments of the view.
But you remember that was like how I viewed it. And
Yeah, but dude,
I
you've
kind
been
of,
talking about your model, and you're walking through, and I'm explaining the problems with it, and then you're like sliding over here and sliding over there. I just want to know where you're going to come
yeah,
down on the
I
end
get
of
what
it.
you're saying. But although that was my position, it was provisional, and I still kind of lean toward that, right? But I've also heard some arguments that there is no violation. It's just an apparency of violation. I'm just saying that I've heard some arguments. That's all. I didn't say
Wait a
that I
minute.
can articulate them.
You still haven't answered the question, right? This is going to be the third or fourth time it's been asked. It's really simple. It's one of those questions you have to answer in order to understand your position so that we can move forward in the dialectic, right? Question was, do you believe that God is constrained by the laws of logic?
No.
So, John, you believe that God could create a square circle, for example, or a married bachelor?
No, not in a natural sense. So we're talking about God's being, not
Why not?
creation.
Why not? Why not? What's the relevant difference?
I think because God creates, like when He created the universe, there are certain laws that govern the universe, such as the law of thermodynamics, such
But
as
aren't
the
those
laws of logic,
contingent, John?
things like that.
Aren't those conditions contingent?
Yeah,
Yeah.
contingent upon God. Yes, God
Yeah. So why
grounds and
couldn't
establishes them.
he have created it differently that we saw like square circles floating around?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. First and foremost, they're contradictory in a
First and
definitional sense,
foremost.
right? And so even from that point of view,
contradictory.
Even though
The whole
that I
point
think
is
that
that they
God,
are contradictory, dude. So
they are, yeah.
So could God have actualized that state of affairs and created a square circle? Is there a possible world in which God creates a square circle or a married bachelor?
Yeah, I mean, my first answer would be no.
Okay, if your answer is no, then you're saying in terms of him actually willing something, he is constrained by the laws of logic, correct?
For the created order of things, yes.
Oh my God.
My
Okay,
God.
so he
Holy
is,
shit.
but then for God himself, there's like another higher order sense where everything else holds and almost universally, but then God is outside of that and
He's
he
above.
can
He's above
contradict
it.
the laws
He's
of
above
logic.
it.
Yeah, so he can contradict the laws of logic in his own being, but he can't create something contradictory.
Basically, something similar to that. Yeah, that's how I view that.
Okay, so then the law of non-contradiction is not true because it doesn't hold universally,
No, it's true. It's
correct?
true in the natural universe.
But it's not true universally, correct?
Not universally. No.
Right. And the stipulation, or part of the
It's
stipulation, is that.
kind of like the law.
Hold on, John.
Okay.
Hold on. Part of the definition is that it is universal. But you're saying that it doesn't hold universally. Therefore, you're rejecting
And
it.
so it's kind of like the laws of thermodynamics. They hold true in a closed system, for example, not universally. Kind of
In
like
an
that.
isolated system,
Wow.
actually. But
What do you think about that,
yeah.
Jake?
Well, he's just rejecting the law of non-contradiction, and
As
What do you
presumably
think about
the law of
universal,
him
identity as
as a
comparing
well.
universal.
physical laws to laws of logic? Just
Yeah, it's just he doesn't understand. I mean, I've explained to these guys many times the difference of what's deemed to be a necessary law of logic and a contingent natural law. But anyway, John, I just think he's neglecting that. But the point, John, is you're just saying it doesn't hold universally. I mean,
So I
you've
mean,
made that very clear.
it seems like when I was talking to Abdul Rahman about this, I talked about the laws of nature, how God instantiates this, how God instantiates the laws of logic as well. He almost took the laws of logic to be a separate concept than the laws of nature. And
They are separate. What do you mean? They're not the same thing.
yeah, he almost thought that as far as the laws of logic, they are true in a universal sense,
Correct.
sans creation, things
that's
like
right.
that.
That's right.
Correct.
Whereas I would understand it as some sort of like the laws of nature, where they are true
Exactly.
within this natural universe.
Exactly.
And
So they're only
and that's how I
contingently
understand the
true.
laws of logic as well within this natural universe.
So John, they're only contingently true. They're not necessarily true.
I guess if you want to use that language, I would probably say, yeah, that's how I view that.
Yeah, they're laws that are contingent. They're not necessary truths.
Okay. And I guess you're
So
going to
there are
give
no
me the
necessary
entailments of that.
truths.
What's
I
that?
guess you're prepared to give me the logical entailments of that and the problems with that.
Well, John, the problem is just obvious. You're just denying the classical laws of logic. What the hell are you talking about?
As
What the
a
fuck
universal,
explains
that's
John
correct.
being so meek with Jake when he's like so uppity with us? I don't get it.
Deference, submission.
John, John, you understand what you're actually saying?
I think I do.
Okay, so you're
I'm
saying
basically saying
that
God
the
is not subject
classical
to the
laws
laws
of
of logic.
logic, right, which means they don't hold universally, and he's above them in some sense, whatever that means. In which case, you're denying law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and law of excluded middle. You're denying all three of them. And you're saying that
Not
none
in the
of them
natural
hold
universe, no.
universally.
But
No,
not in
but
the natural universe.
for God, none of them hold universally, correct? In the sense that they don't apply to him.
Right. I think that it's not like he's subject to them. In other words, he's sovereign over them.
But
Okay. So
don't you?
John, what you have done, let me just make this final statement, Tom. So John, what you have done, you've solved the logical problem of the Trinity by abandoning logic.
Well, I think if you're going to
Correct?
attempt to use logic to understand the Trinity, I think it's going to be failed to begin with, in a sense
He does
that,
the
from
same
my
thing with the
understanding,
power of evil.
the
He does.
knowledge, the
What
mysteries of the
problem?
Trinity, the knowledge of the Trinity is
Here comes the
divinely.
mystery talk.
No, I'm just
Yep.
saying it is given by inspiration of the Holy Spirit. I mean, what, like even in the Catechism 278, it'll say stuff like that, and
Yeah,
so
and that's garbage because I already told you how the word mystery is used in the Bible. Can you show me an instance of the Bible and where it uses the word mystery in the way that you are?
well, I understand
You
mystery
can't.
as something that is revealed in a sense of made known,
Yeah. So if it's
and I
real, it's revealed and made known, then you would know what it is. Correct?
yeah,
It's
and
not something that you
that's what
don't
the
know what it is.
Catechism says though, is that the Bible does say that. I mean, the Catechism does say how it has been made known to believers. So I'm paraphrasing, of course, but and it's not comprehensible to someone who does not have that faith.
John, can you know what a contradiction is?
What?
Meaning, can you grasp that?
Yeah, A and not A.
Yeah, but you can affirm it. So you have no problem with that. You have no problem saying God is contradictory.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be able to affirm that. No,
Why not?
I think that God can be viewed as contradictory by using natural processes to analyze God. I would say it that
John,
way.
we're not using natural processes.
Well,
We're using the laws of logic.
yeah, and I consider that natural.
Okay, yeah, you consider them natural and created by God, correct?
Well, emanating from God, maybe from the mind of
Are
Well
they,
God.
then,
That kind of.
yeah. Are they eternally emanating? Or is it just like happen in time? How does that work?
No, it's kind of like creation. Is creation
Okay, God
eternally
goes into
emanating? No,
his
it
logic
is. It is
workshop.
Oh,
something that
okay.
God.
So it's created. So that means sans creation, as you like to use, apart from creation or without creation. That means the laws of logic don't apply to God, correct?
Yeah, I would actually say that.
Yeah. So you're just rejecting the laws of logic, dude.
In a
There's
universal
no
sense,
logic.
so
yes.
if the laws of logic were created before any creation, was God God?
Well, even the consideration of that concept would require language that incorporates the laws of logic. So you're trying
John, was
to.
God identical to himself prior to creation?
Well, I mean, if you're going to look at it from the lens of logic, and you're viewing, like, the answer to something like that is, it's not possible. Well, it's not possible to know
Wow.
the
That's
reality of.
mysterious.
It would have to be speculation.
It's not. You'd have to
No, it's not
It's
speculate.
not
speculation
speculation,
because
dude.
there are no laws of logic
I
for
didn't
what you
say
just
there's
said.
no laws of logic.
Yes, you did.
You
You said
said
that the
there.
laws
You
of
said
logic were
that they don't
created.
exist until
In a,
God
Prior to
in,
their
creates them.
creation,
no,
they
no,
didn't
no.
exist.
I said they don't exist in the universal sense, is what I said.
Yeah, but if creation doesn't exist and they're the only thing that they apply to, then they don't exist prior to God creating them and creation existing.
I think they could still exist within the mind of God in a sense
You've got to be
of
fucking kidding me.
some of these
Oh my
natural laws.
God, dude. If they exist in the
Ad
mind
hoc
of God,
gibberish.
they
That's all
exist
this is.
in the mind of God
And
eternally?
and so
Uncreated?
what I'm saying is this, okay? These considerations are attempted in the here and now, in the natural universe, by
So
finite
what?
creatures such as ourselves,
Oh,
implementing certain God-given laws to do what? Examine God and consider God? This is what you're
yes.
attempting to do. There is a
Yes.
circularity somewhere in there.
We're trying to find out if God is contradictory or not. That's correct.
Yeah,
You're
but
just biting the bullet and saying, oh, I don't care. He may be. Who cares?
And if you contradict yourself when you try to explain it,
Yeah, John, going back to the
It's
point,
unbelievable.
God prior to creation, is he identical to himself?
yeah, but that kind of consideration requires implementing the laws of logic, of which Like it's kind
Exactly.
of like
He's just
it's
throwing
kind
his
of
hands up.
What's the fucking answer, stupid?
it's kind of like asking, are the laws of thermodynamics true? Sans creation. It's kind of hard to
No, it's
answer
very
that because
simple to
now you have
answer
to
that and say
speculate.
no, because creation doesn't exist. That's very simple to answer.
Well, that doesn't imply that the laws necessarily don't have to exist.
How are they true if they don't
They just can't be
exist? How are you
demonstrated.
saying
They
that
just
they
can't be
exist?
demonstrated to be true without the natural existence. But doesn't
What's
mean
the
that they
fucking
didn't
proof
exist.
maker? What is even the proposition?
John,
If they don't
let's
The
exist,
law
dude.
can't do
let's go.
anything if
I
the
mean,
law doesn't
depending on how
exist.
you understand existence, I would think that they existed in the mind of God.
You're conceiving of it in the mind of God, correct?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so was the law of
mm,
identity, hold on, John, was the law of identity, did it eternally exist in the mind of God?
um, yeah, I would think that it comes from the nature
Oh
of
my
God, the
god.
mind of God, so
No,
forth.
you
Oh my
said it
Such
god.
as,
comes from,
but
but before you said it was
right.
created. So now when you said, oh, it exists, but it was created, now you're equivocating because now you're saying that, oh, but what I mean by exists is in the mind of God and eternally. So how is it created if it exists eternally in God's
It was the
mind?
same thing with the laws of nature, right? They existed in the mind of God, but they were when the natural universe was created. These laws are somehow unified in the sense of being established. So these laws are established not prior
Okay,
to
so
the
John,
creation.
you believe in things that are contingent and eternal and created. The law
Um,
of logic to you is something that is created, it is contingent, and it is eternal.
I wouldn't
Correct?
I wouldn't necessarily claim that these laws are eternal, only in the sense that they are uh, non-creation, but yet they are in the mind of God.
Dude, you
And
literally
so
said before it was created.
when creation
Just saying
began, yes,
created and not
when
created.
creation began, yes, these things were created in a sense of establishment. They're created. They were made. They were appointed. If you wanted to use the technical term, the word would be asah in the biblical Hebrew,
Okay, that was just
which
nonsense.
is
John,
not synonymous with the sort of an ex nihilo creation. That's not what I'm talking about.
yeah, so you just mean that they're eternally dependent on God and God's mind, correct?
Yeah, they're contingent. I'm not saying they're not contingent.
Anyway, John, back to the question. When we were asking if God is identical to himself prior to creation, are you going to give a clear answer to that? Or are you just going to keep saying, well, they don't apply? But you're saying they're eternal in God's mind, so they would exist in order for them to be able to apply in that case. Why couldn't they be applied?
Yeah, I would say that like it's kind of like asking like what time was it before the universe was created? Uh, We
But that's what you
understand
just
time.
said.
No, it's not, dude.
It's a little bit
No,
like
it's
that because
not.
what you're asking to consider is a logical
You just said
consideration,
logic existed
and you're
before it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
created.
because normally the laws of logic are not subject dependent, meaning they don't depend on whether or not we're asking about Tom Rabbit or John Lee or a stop sign or God. They're not typically understood to be subject or context dependent. They're universal in that way. So it has nothing to do with creation or not creation. However,
yeah, but
the
I don't
natural
believe them
laws,
to be universal.
hold on, but the natural laws, like the laws of thermodynamics, typically they're understood to, at least from a theist perspective, to be applicable to creation. You don't ask about the law of thermodynamics with respect to God and things of that nature. However, you would when it comes to the laws of logic if you thought that they were eternal and actually universal and that they apply to God. But you don't think that. You think that they're subject dependent. They apply to everything else except for God. Correct?
Yeah, in a sense that, well, I'm just saying this. They can and do apply to God, but only in the sense that the creatures who are finite, who have limited minds, are implementing the things that God has given us to consider God.
That
in a
just means
sense.
they don't apply necessarily, and that's not even what you're copying to.
And so what I'm saying is that when you think of a world that has not been created, right? There is no laws of thermodynamics, and I would even contend there is no logic.
Whoa, now you're saying there is no logic.
Not as something established for the natural order of things.
Wait. Before, I thought it was established for the natural order, but not for God. Now you're saying it's not established whatsoever?
No.
Did I understand
I
that correctly?
didn't say not for God. In other words, we can use the laws of logic in order to make considerations for a God that we are limited in understanding. We're talking about application to God, right? Subject to God. A God being subject to them in a universal sense. This is
How
what I
can you do
disagree
that?
with.
How can you use logic to describe God when logic doesn't apply to God? How can you do that?
I didn't say it couldn't be applied to God. I'm saying that
John, is it possible that sans creation, God was not identical to himself? Is that possible?
I would say that sans creation, there were no laws of identity to even contemplate.
So that
Look
would
how
be
he won't answer
possible.
the question. Look at that fucking dodge.
Because your question assumes a
He's saying there was no
universal
logic.
understanding of the laws of logic, and therefore, being that the laws of logic existed in perpetuity, that consideration can be made. I don't make that assumption.
Okay, so you just reject classical logic because you don't believe any of the three laws are universal, correct?
In a universal sense, I don't.
Okay,
But
so
that doesn't mean I
I don't
reject the
think there's any
classical laws of
reason to
logic,
continue.
though. That's not
It does, because the idea is that they are universal. That's the understanding. They're not
okay.
meant to be understood
So
as subject dependent,
okay.
classically
So
understood.
the
You'd
more
have to adopt a sub-classical
yeah. But
understanding.
okay, but the more accurate statement would be, I reject the classical laws of logic being universal, but in the world that we live in the natural order of things,
Dude,
I
that's
do
just
believe
saying
that
the
they're
same
applicable.
thing. If definitionally the classical laws of logic are understood to hold universally, then there's no point in saying I just don't believe that they're universal. You just don't believe in them because that's definitionally true that they're meant to be understood as universal.
So if the definition of classical laws of logic imply necessarily universality, then I have no problem if that is the case, which I'm not convinced of. But if that's the case, I have no problem rejecting it.
You're not convinced of it.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that there's some sort of
Like the classic, like
a
Facebook new
prerequisite that
atheist.
they
I'm
need
just
to
I'm
be
just not
universal.
convinced.
Dude, that's how they're understood classically, John. That's the whole point. The subclassical logics, even them, they don't, and this is what they argue, people like Grand Priest, which Matt likes to bring up. They think that they can avoid, the principle of explosion where you just get anything being contradictory, basically. So they don't think that it doesn't apply in any instance. They're just saying it's not universal. You understand that?
Yeah, I just that would be my position, and it's subject to change. But that would be my position. That although I
Okay,
agree with
John.
the laws of logic, and I just as I agree with the laws of thermodynamics,
Yeah.
I don't think either are universal.
Okay, so
John the
that was
Dial
your
Atheist.
exactly. So John, you said that's your position and it's subject to change. I can appreciate that. I hope it will change on some point. But was that your position going into this conversation?
Yeah, more or less. You've heard me on
So why
talking
didn't you
about it.
explain it this way from the beginning instead of wasting our time talking about a guy with two papers and whatever else you were going on about?
Because it wasn't his position.
Well, I didn't know what
I don't think
I
it
didn't
was.
know what direction you want to take it, but this particular position, Jake, I'm pretty sure you kind of knew about already.
Yeah, but bro, you could just simply have stated this from the beginning, and we could say,
Well,
okay, end of story. We would have poked fun at it for the past 15 minutes like we did, and then that would have been the end. We
if
wouldn't
you
have
I
needed
want
to
to
done all the other
if you
let me
would
stuff.
just
have
say one
asked, I
thing
would have
because
just simply answered you.
yeah, that's what would have happened. So, John, your analogies I don't think were accurate. So, do you think? Let me ask you these questions. In a situation where there is no time, is it possible for it to be 3 o'clock?
I think the question would just come up right, like an error.
Oh my god.
John, it can't be 3 o'clock if there's no time.
Yeah, if there's no once again, I that particular question about if there were no time, I don't agree that we can consider an existence without time in a sense of implementing the laws of logic and reason.
How do you consider
and things
anything then?
things in the natural.
Just talking about
Well,
time, bro.
we can consider things in the natural universe, is what I'm trying to say. He's trying to insert a hypothetical of implementing the laws of logic to a situation where I'm claiming that it's not universally existent, for example, and then
John, I don't know
apply
what this
that.
has to do. It's a really simple question. John, if it is the case that there's no time, is it possible that it is 3 o'clock?
Yeah, and I would say that the question is unanswerable.
It's unanswerable. What prevents you from answering it?
Because it assumes some sort of universality of the laws of logic.
We're talking
It's
about
unanswerable because he denies the laws of logic.
Universally.
So are you saying it's possible for it to be 3 o'clock with no time?
Again, if you're going to consider the logical possibility of, you still have to use the laws of logic, sir.
He didn't ask you that. He just asked if it's possible.
Yeah, so John, can you even make any true statements about God sans creation?
Other than what is revealed to us, it would be speculation.
So John, how would you refute?
How do you know what's revealed to you?
How would you refute the idea if I said that my God is a square circle?
I would say, cool story, bro.
So you wouldn't be able to refute that, just to be clear.
No, it was just like, like my God exists in a brain in a vat. Like, I'm not interested in refuting that either.
Because no, you're not. It's not that you're not
John,
interested. It's that you, given your position, you can't, right?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'll say this way. I don't know about can't, but I certainly am not willing to.
Okay. Sounds like you're tapped out, dude.
John, you said that atheism is irrational. By that, do you mean that there's contradictions in atheism?
I think that a great number of views have been demonstrated to be incoherent and irrational. Atheism is not a monolith
incoherent
view,
meaning
right?
Right. So of those of that set of views under the set of atheism, which are incoherent, by incoherent, do you mean that it is containing some kind of contradiction?
Yeah, I think there are clear contradictions in people who claim to have lack of belief in God, and when they express
No, we're
their
talking about
worldview,
I'm talking about the belief, the worldview of atheism. Do you think there's contradictions in it?
Yeah, with respects to like atheism in and of itself, the answer would be no. There are no contradictions in and of itself. It's just a proposition
really?
that there's no God.
This is
right?
great.
Are you kidding me?
This is great.
So that's not what I'm talking about. But people's views.
How would you know? How would you know if somebody
can be incoherent?
How would you know if somebody contradicts themselves, John?
They're inconsistent. They're incoherent.
But the laws of logic are
They
not.
violate. They violate the laws of logic, for example.
Why are they not allowed to, John?
What was the
If it's
question,
not
Jake?
if it's not universal, why can't Tom just say that the law doesn't apply in this case because it's not universal?
Well,
So
the law,
you can just say,
well, like I said, the laws do apply necessarily within this natural universe. That's what
yeah,
I'm
but
saying.
why does an atheist have to affirm that? Why can't they just take your view and instead of applying it to God, apply it to what you consider to be the natural realm?
I don't quite understand that question.
You say that
Hmm.
the laws of logic don't hold universally and God is exempt. Why can't an atheist say that about the natural world?
That the natural world is exempt from the laws of logic?
Correct. That it
Universally,
doesn't
like
hold.
in
It
all
doesn't hold
instances.
universally. It might hold in some instances, but not all,
Hmm.
including Tom's own beliefs. It doesn't hold in that case. He's allowed to
Okay.
contradict himself.
Okay, and so an atheist certainly could try to make that attempt to say that they don't hold in the natural world, but that position has a lot of entailments to it.
No, they don't
that
hold
would
You're already
universally.
wrong.
You're already wrong.
You're already wrong. Just listen, Mr. Nuance, right? Listen. No one said that they don't hold period in the natural world. It was said they don't hold always.
Universally.
That's why you have dialetheism.
That's right. So what's wrong with dialetheism?
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
So what are you talking
Yeah,
about
because
when
you're
you say that,
embracing it. That's the
that
point.
an atheist contradicts themselves?
Yeah, I think implementing the laws of logic that are temporal and contingent upon God, that we can use those laws to demonstrate that a particular atheist holds views that are inconsistent within other beliefs within his model.
There's no problem. There's no problem with dialetheism, so the law of non-contradiction doesn't hold. So anyone can contradict themselves at any time.
And so, if that's the view that you hold,
No, that's your view.
that particular.
That's what you
No,
just said. You just said there's no
we're
problem
not
with
talking.
Yeah,
No,
dialetheism.
but
that doesn't
John, you're not
represent my
able to
view.
argue. You're not able to argue against that view, are you?
The only way that, as far as argument goes, we would have to have a basis of mutual agreement, right? And if it is a case that they don't even agree upon the laws of logic, for example,
Like you.
then there's no purpose in even making the attempt to have a conversation if
Right.
we don't have
So,
that
like
basic
how
agreement.
you don't believe that the laws of logic apply to God, it would kind of be useless to speak about God in a logical way and use logical arguments, right? Because you don't believe they apply to God. So there would be no point in talking with you about God, right?
No, because you and I do agree on the laws of logic, but
No, we don't.
No, I don't
No,
think
we
you do.
definitely don't.
there.
We're gonna have
So
to
in other words,
remove that
no,
from the
What I'm
recording.
saying is, at least if you view it universally, and I view it in a sort of temporal sense, right?
No, you think that they came after God, right?
Yes.
Right, but you
John,
don't.
we
There's not an
definitely
agreement.
don't have
Oh
the
my
same view,
God.
dude. Like the fact that you think after all this time that we're actually agreeing is just astonishing.
No.
I don't
Well,
know how you
I
could
think you
possibly
guys are
think we're agreeing.
misunderstanding. Okay, what I'm saying. For example, I believe
Oh
that
my
this
God.
apple
How would we
exists.
know?
You hang on, sir. You believe that this apple exists. Now, I may believe this apple is caused by God. You may believe it's by natural selection or something, right? It's not. It doesn't really matter if you believe that the natural selection. I believe in God. The point is that if we both agree that this apple exists, we could talk about this apple.
Yeah, but when presented with logical problems, you'll just say, "Well, that doesn't apply to God." That's dumb.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Do you think logical problems apply to God?
I think that that God is
Just start
above
with a yes or
logic.
no and then explain.
What I'm saying is God is not subject to logic, so that when our considerations of trying to uh, uh, analyze God in an exhaustive manner
So you
is
got to run all your
a vain
geriatric
endeavor.
gibberish through the fucking
And so I'm
translation
not.
machine to get a
Yeah, so I
no.
wouldn't even attempt it. So I wouldn't attempt it. I think there are ways to view
So the answer is no. So
consider
my
God.
criticism goes
I think
through.
I think there are many analogical methods by which to consider God, and those are the
No.
methods that I.
John, how would
I thought
you rate your defense of your position on the Trinity? Like,
Well,
because you mentioned
I
going
don't
toe to toe. Like, how would you
I
rate your
don't necessarily think
defense?
we talked that much about the Trinity in the last hour or so. Seems like we talked a
Oh,
lot about the laws of logic and things
Why is
like
that
that.
relevant to the question with regards to the section of the conversation where you defended the Trinity? How do you
Well,
rate
I
yourself?
mean, what attack was made?
what? What was your question?
Well, I mean, the question of rating my defense of the Trinity, I would almost, by that
Yeah.
kind of question, I would kind of think like, what attack was made, other than certain claims about the universality of the laws of logic and Leibniz's law, and the law of identity,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Right. Like the attack that was made is you said that you could defend it, and you started off by using analogies and talking a lot, and then what wound up happening was you basically threw the laws of logic out the window by saying that they don't apply universally and that
Yeah,
they don't apply to
the
God.
claim that I could
So
defend it was not
how
actually
would you
made, though,
rate that?
Jake. There was.
Yeah, but I'm just saying to
Mhm.
you, like, what kind of a, like, this isn't a hard position to come up with, right? Something very easy, and that's why I said you could have just stated it at the beginning, and there wouldn't be much to really talk about with respect to the Trinity, and then we would just be having this other conversation, right?
Yeah, John, this was one of the worst defenses of the Trinity I've ever heard.
That's fine.
You gave up the ghost and the laws of logic. You gave up your criticism of atheists, right? You gave up that God was identical to himself prior to creation.
I didn't say that, sir.
Um,
I didn't give up.
You didn't affirm it.
Well, you
You
didn't.
weren't
Yeah,
weighing
I
this.
didn't give up any criticism of atheist worldviews, sir. I think they're all
Yeah, it's just an
incoherent.
entailment. It's just an entailment what you said. We know you didn't say it, but that doesn't mean that you
Yeah, so go ahead and
didn't
make up whatever you want about positions I don't
No,
hold.
I'm not. No, Jake, do you not think that that's an entailment of what he said? That God, prior to creation,
Yeah.
logically prior, is not
No,
identical to himself.
wait a minute.
Is that not the entailment?
Wait a minute.
Well,
Wait
at
a
the
minute.
very least, he was
hang on,
agnostic
sir.
on it. He's agnostic on
You
it.
made two claims, of which what you're mentioning right now was not one of the two, sir.
He just repeated
What are you
that.
talking about?
That was one of the claims he just made. What do you mean?
No, actually, it wasn't, Jake. He mentioned two specific claims, and right now he says he's talking about prior to creation or something like that. That was not
John,
mentioned
do
in
you
the
just
claims
mean
that he
that it
falsely
wasn't
attributed.
like the same exact words verbatim? Is that what you mean?
No, they were completely different claims.
Okay, well, I didn't catch
Talking
that. I
about?
didn't see them that way.
And when he started off with regard to like giving up on atheism, which has nothing to do, Jake, with what he just said. Do you agree? That's what I was objecting to. That was one of the two.
What?
No, well, we were trying to ask you about how you would attack
But Jake,
an atheist who
right?
held to that position, and you didn't give any answer. I mean,
Well, first and foremost, he said that I gave up on my attacks against atheism, which is absolutely false. And then he says, didn't John? And then he brings in God, sans creation, all of that. That's not what I said that he's strawmanning me with. That's what I'm
No,
trying
the
to point out.
entailment of the things that you. I'll just make it
Entailment
clear
of
for you
that
again, John.
has nothing
I'll
to
just
do
make
with
it
your
really.
false claims.
I'll just make it really clear again, John. Right. The entailment of the things that you did say is that before creation, God was not identical to himself. That's the
I
entailment.
didn't say that, sir. That's misrepresentation.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you didn't say it, right? Because you don't want to say it, but it was said, and it was as far as an entailment, right? The things that you did say entails that. Jake, do you disagree, Jake?
No, I don't disagree, but I think just John's just kind of waffling at this point.
There you go, John.
So,
Jake does not disagree with me. Do you think Jake is straw manning you, John?
well, of course he thinks that. I mean, what else is he gonna think?
No, he doesn't want to say that though because he defers to you. He don't like me though. So I see. He wanted to direct all the. I mean, you as much said so like many times that that's basically the entailment of the things he's saying. He doesn't want to come at you though because he defers to you. He's meek towards you. But he doesn't like me, so he wants to claim that I'm strawmanning him. When it's pointed out that you affirm the thing that I said, he won't affirm that you're strawmanning him.
But yeah, I mean, John is definitely not given any principal way of distinguishing. So I don't know. Maybe he'll come up with something later on, but I don't see it here.
Yeah, he sounds inconsistent, and you seem to say that he's done pretty poorly. And you've been talking to him on Facebook for quite a while, right? And I agree with you for the most part that he's done pretty bad, right?
I think I could go fairly toe to toe with them on the Trinity. Sure.